Welcome to this cool, epic show, the Action Hero Podcast. Get ready for your daily dose of addictive action stories told in a fun, adventurous way that will leave you craving more. Rate and follow for more Action Hero episodes.
That's right.
Today we're tackling a really fascinating pair of narratives, and these came straight from you. Our listeners sent these in, and we've been dissecting them, pulling out what really makes them tick.
Yeah, we have two stories today that really explore how introducing a single potent element into a familiar situation can completely upend the existing dynamics and lead to some really gripping outcomes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
First up, we're venturing to the Yorkshire moors with Shot Through the Heart. Now, you might immediately think classic romantic drama, right? Windswept silhouette against the horizon.
Right.
But imagine that same intense landscape, that same passionate brooding suddenly colliding with the stark reality of a firearm. How does that change the age-old conflicts we might expect?
Well, it's interesting to consider how the introduction of a weapon like a revolver,
Yeah.
like you said, instantly recalibrates the power structures within the story.
Yeah.
You think about the classic dynamic between Heathcliff and Hindley, where once dominance might have been asserted through social standing or physical strength, the presence of a gun offers an immediate and undeniable equalizer.
Right.
It's no longer just about who holds the higher social rank, but who holds the greater firepower.
Okay, so Heathcliff returns, and this time the weight of his past isn't just a burden, it's potentially a loaded chamber.
Literally.
When he confronts Hindley, it's not a shouting match, it's a stark power imbalance.
Yeah.
What does that initial scene with the threat of the revolver tell us about how this new element shifts their relationship?
I think it highlights the vulnerability of the previously dominant figure. Hindley's bluster and control are immediately undermined by this tangible threat.
Yeah.
The wild justice of the gunshot, even if not immediately fatal, signifies a complete departure from the established rules of engagement. It's a primal assertion of power that bypasses any pretense of social decorum. And the psychological impact on Hindley, the erosion of his authority, is perhaps even more significant than any physical wound.
Yeah, he's been shot down, literally and figuratively. And then Isabella gets caught in the crossfire. Instead of a romantic entanglement with Heathcliff, she's handed a weapon and a target, Edgar. But her action is driven by fear, a desperate attempt to escape. How does the revolver function differently in her hands compared to Heathcliff's?
Well, this raises a crucial point about agency and intention. For Isabella, the gun isn't a tool of calculated revenge, but rather an instrument of survival. Her fear and lack of precision underscore her desperation. Yet even a poorly aimed shot is enough to expose Edgar's weakness, his underlying cowardice. So while the intent differs from Heathcliff's calculated vengeance, the outcome is still a disruption of the existing power dynamic, revealing hidden vulnerabilities.
Right, so it's almost like this accidental chaos is still kind of tipping the scales in a way that wouldn't have happened otherwise.
Yeah.
Now here's a twist. Young Cathy, far from being repulsed by all this, is drawn to the weapon, and Heathcliff takes it upon himself to teach her how to use it. What's the implication of this mentoring and violence for her character and the trajectory of the story?
Well, this is a potentially formative moment for Cathy. Heathcliff, perhaps seeing a reflection of his own capacity for raw power in her, is essentially inducting her into a world where violence is a means of control. He's not just teaching her a skill, he's offering her a particular lens through which to view conflict and resolution. It suggests a possible perpetuation of the cycle of aggression, a passing down of a dangerous legacy.
Right, it's like he's saying, this is how you survive in this world, this is how you claim what's yours.
Right.
But then Hareton enters the fray, and he doesn't reach for a pistol. He uses his father's hunting rifle in an ambush. It's a different kind of confrontation, altogether less direct, more rooted in his environment.
Yeah.
What does this choice of weapon and tactic tell us about his character and his conflict with Heathcliff?
Well, I think Hareton's choice speaks to a more visceral, perhaps less refined form of rage. The hunting rifle suggests a connection to the land, to a more traditional form of conflict. The ambush itself indicates a deep-seated resentment, a bitterness that doesn't seek a formal showdown, but rather a raw, uncontrolled expression. The fact that Heathcliff is wounded but survives adds another layer, almost as if he expects or even welcomes this physical manifestation of the pain he's endured.
Almost like a test, almost like he's trying to prove something both to himself and to Heathcliff in that moment. And Cathy's reaction to this violent encounter is intriguing. She doesn't intervene, doesn't plead for peace. She watches a mix of horror and fascination on her face. It seems like she's processing something profound about the nature of conflict. What's going on there?
Exactly. I think she's witnessing the unfiltered consequences of violence, and it's clearly having a significant impact on her understanding of power and resolution. The lines between victim and aggressor, right and wrong, are likely becoming increasingly blurred for her. And it's in her gaze that Heathcliff perhaps sees the culmination of his vengeful actions and just maybe the beginning of his disillusionment with them.
Right. Maybe a dawning realization that this path he's chosen doesn't actually lead where he thought it would.
Exactly.
And then, surprisingly, Heathcliff simply discards the revolver. After all the violence it enabled, he just throws it away. What do you think prompts this seemingly sudden renunciation of the weapon?
Well, I think what's crucial here is the realization that the act of revenge facilitated by the gun hasn't brought him the satisfaction or peace he might have sought. The weapon initially envisioned as a tool for justice or retribution has ultimately left him emotionally empty. Discarding it symbolizes a potential rejection of that destructive path, an acknowledgement of its hollowness. He's not a triumphant victor. He's just another casualty of the very violence he embraced.
It's as if the weapon amplified his capacity to inflict suffering, but it was powerless to heal his own. The image of him casting it aside is quite striking.
It really is.
Okay, now let's pivot completely. We're plunging into Two-Faced Tango, a story that throws us headfirst into the murky world of undercover operations and dangerous arms dealers.
Right.
This feels like a completely different kind of action, doesn't it?
Absolutely. This narrative transports us to a contemporary setting where the action isn't necessarily about physical confrontations, at least initially, but about deception and high stakes in the world of international crime.
Right.
Sarah goes deep undercover as Maya to expose the illicit dealings of an arms dealer named Rojas. The title itself hints at the inherent duality and the dangerous dance she's engaging in.
So Sarah's portrayed as someone remarkably adaptable, able to seamlessly blend into this dangerous underworld. She infiltrates Rojas's inner circle, navigating a treacherous landscape of clandestine meetings and whispered transactions. But then she encounters Diego, Rojas's protege, who seems to possess a different kind of moral compass. What role does his character play in complicating Sarah's mission?
Well, I think Diego introduces a significant element of moral ambiguity. He's embedded within this criminal enterprise, yet there are indications of an internal struggle, a potential dissatisfaction with Rojas's ruthlessness.
Right.
He's not a stereotypical villain, and his presence forces Sarah to confront the possibility that the world she's investigating isn't simply black and white. It suggests that even within the shadows, there can be nuances and conflicting motivations.
Right. It's not as simple as good guys, bad guys. Everyone's got their own agenda, their own reasons for being there.
Exactly.
And then the unexpected happens, in ambush, and Diego turns on Rojas. It's a sudden eruption of violence and betrayal that completely shifts the narrative.
It does.
What do you think motivates Diego's dramatic change of allegiance?
I think Diego's betrayal likely stems from a deeper understanding of Rojas's true nature. Perhaps witnessing firsthand the extent of his cruelty or the devastating consequences of his actions. His justification labeling Rojas a monster suggests a moral breaking point or perhaps a strategic power play masked by a sense of righteousness. Regardless of his true motives, this act of betrayal throws Sarah's carefully constructed reality into chaos.
And in the immediate aftermath, Diego hands Sarah a gun. This is a pivotal moment, a true crossroads for her character. What do you think is going through her mind as she holds that weapon?
Oh, this is the core ethical dilemma of the story. The gun isn't just a tool. It represents a choice that could fundamentally alter Sarah's identity and her mission. Diego presents it as the trigger of truth, the means by which she can expose Rojas's network.
Right.
However, accepting it means potentially crossing a line blurring the boundaries between objective observer and active participant, between journalist and someone directly involved in the violence she's reporting on.
Right. She's no longer just documenting, she's potentially becoming an agent within the story itself with all the moral implications that entails. And she agrees to take the gun, but with a condition. Diego must disappear. What does this tell us about the ethical tightrope she's walking?
Well, I think her condition reveals a desire to salvage some semblance of her original purpose. She wants the story, the exposure of the truth, but she also recognizes the inherent danger and moral compromise that Diego's continued presence represents. It's a pragmatic decision, acknowledging the potential value of the information he possesses, while attempting to maintain a degree of separation from the violence and betrayal he embodies. It's a complex negotiation between her journalistic ethics and the harsh realities of the world she's infiltrated.
Right. So it's like she's trying to hold on to some sense of her own morality, even while acknowledging that she's been drawn into something incredibly murky.
Exactly.
And the story concludes with Sarah holding the gun, a predator's smile on her face. Her journey has clearly taken her down a dark and unforeseen path.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The ending leaves us with a powerful sense of transformation.
Yeah.
Sarah, who began as an observer, seeking to uncover the truth, has been irrevocably changed by her immersion in this world of deception and violence. The gun in her hand symbolizes her descent into a morally ambiguous territory, suggesting that the pursuit of truth in such a dangerous environment may come at a significant personal cost, potentially even the compromise of her initial ideals.
So reflecting on these two very different narratives, what key insights do you think they offer us about action and its consequences? In Shot Through the Heart, the introduction of a firearm into a familiar setting instantly amplified existing tensions, forcing characters to confront their past with deadly new possibilities. It makes you consider how even seemingly simple technological advancements can dramatically alter the dynamics of personal conflict.
And in Two-Faced Tango, we see how the high-stakes world of undercover operations can push individuals to their ethical limits. The moment Sarah holds that gun, she's no longer just a reporter. She's facing a profound moral crossroads, highlighting the blurred lines between observer and participant in situations where deception and danger are constant companions. It makes you wonder about the personal toll of pursuing justice in the shadows.
These stories, though fictional, tap into something fundamental about human nature when confronted with high-stakes situations and the potential for decisive action. They provide a compelling, albeit dramatic, glimpse into worlds where choices carry life or death consequences.
We hope this exploration into these action-packed narratives has given you some compelling points to consider. What resonated most with you? What questions did these stories spark in your own mind? We encourage you to keep thinking about these themes.
That brings this adrenaline-fueled session of the Action Hero podcast to a close. We'll be back soon with more gripping tales and insightful analysis just for you. Don't forget to rate and follow so you don't miss our next thrilling installment.
See you next time.